All right, last one this week, I think. Okay, so we're working on this. You guys saw that. Let me just look at it here because I want to show you like what you can do. So texture and clarity are kind of like contrast. Okay, they're like lesser versions of contrast, but clarity is a little different in that when you increase it, it does pull out some of the color. So if I were to add like a little texture to this, and again, I'm like looking down here, you can see it's starting to, let me just crank it. It's starting to add like a little bit more separation, okay? It's starting to look a little weird and fake, okay? Let me bring that down to 0. Now let me bring up clarity all the way. Ooh, that's kind of cool. And that's even cranked. But you can see how it pulls out the color and it kind of gives it this weird like kind of vibe to it, which is kind of interesting. All right, so if I remove all clarity, wow, that looks really good, right? If I remove all texture, blurs it. Okay, so those are things you probably don't want to do. I could add a little texture and then like pump up. It starts to look a little fake though if you add too much. And I added like a little bit of clarity, and those are kind of cool. All right, so again, we went from this to like this kind of weird image. All right, let's look at something that like has a lot of texture. Okay, so let me just kind of quickly, actually I'm going to hit auto. Um, that looks fine to me. And I'm going to add some texture just so we can really see. You can see it really like pulling out the separation and the texture. All right, and like, ooh, that looks pretty good. That's like 60 plus. You know, and you want to be like kind of judicious with it. Let me add like a buck ton of clarity. And then like all of a sudden that like telephone pole looks kind of cool. All right, I can add like a little vibrance. All right. One thing about vibrance that we haven't talked about yet is like what's the difference between vibrance and saturation? So saturation can add color everywhere, okay? Or I could take away color, okay? What vibrance does is where there's a lack of color, it tries to like even it out, okay? So it tries to add color or pump up tonality where it's kind of muted, all right? And again, it's just a very smart algorithm. So over here, there's some color. Here, there's kind of a lack of, let's see what happens when we pump up vibrance. And it kind of, you know, it does it like all over the image, but in a much more kind of subtle way. And still, this looks very cartoonish to me. All right, I wouldn't really pump it up that much, but you could add like a little vibrance, and it's really going to try to attack that pole and like give that some. Now the weird thing is like with clarity, it wants to take out color. So I'm going to back that up a little bit, and I'm going to add just a little bit more texture to it. And now that kind of starts to look like a little bit better. It looks realistic, you know, it looks like kind of natural without looking overworked. Okay, and that's like really the goal of what we're doing in Lightroom. We're trying to enhance the images without making them appear like either like too garish or too just kind of like, hey, what's up, computer? You know? So those are the things we're kind of going for. And again, it's just like a sensitivity working on photographs for as long as I have in a myriad of situations as a photographer, as a editor. Um, you know, just takes a long time. And you kind of build up like, well, what kind of image do you like? Like that kind of stuff. Okay, kind of break up your own style. All right, that's it. Okay, texture, clarity, even a little bit about vibrance, saturation. That is plenty of us for us to deal with. Next week we'll get into like a little bit of retouching and just like a bunch of other stuff. Okay? Yeah, the image is jumping. You like that? Okay, that's where we're going to end.